What's up, everybody? It is Voodoo 51292 here, and I am making a video tonight in a series. By the way, I apologize if there's like blood here on my lip, which it looks like there is. I just actually shaved to make this video, and I wound up cutting my upper lip. But anyway, I'm making a video tonight in a series that I have not added a video to in a very, very long time, because there has not been a topic in a while that I have felt like would make a great Voodoo's Thoughts topic. But tonight is a different story. I found a topic that I think is perfect for Voodoo's Thoughts, so I'm going to make a new Voodoo's Thoughts tonight. And this one is going to be centered on the issue surrounding one particular game called Gone Home. And I'm going to use this one game to kind of expand upon my commentary on this topic. So, to start off with, Gone Home is a game that was released in August of 2013, last year, as a PC-only game. And when I was watching, or reading media's lists of top 10 games or Game of the Year awards at the end of the year, I saw this game mentioned as contender for Game of the Year on several different locations. I've seen it listed in the top 10 games of last year several times near the top, and I didn't really know much about Gone Home. Well, tonight I happened to I found a new guy on YouTube that I'm starting to like watching his videos. His name's Rabid Retrospect Gamer, or Rabid Retrospect Games, something along those lines. I've been watching him play Don't Starve. Well, I noticed tonight in his videos that he had played Gone Home, and I said, I'm going to go ahead and watch this guy's playthrough of this game because it's interesting to me and I heard a lot about it. So I sat down and I watched Gone Home, and I have thoughts on the game, the attention that the media has given to this game, and thoughts on this game in contention for Game of the Year. So first of all, spoiler alert for Gone Home, I am going to be talking somewhat about the plot of this game. So if you don't want to be spoiled for Gone Home, don't watch the video if you have any plans on playing it later. It is a PC-only game, so I just want to let you guys know that. But there will be some spoilers. So now that that's out of the way, I warned you. Gone Home is virtually a game of you exploring a house. You are the eldest daughter in a family of 4, your parents and your younger sister. You come home from a year away, I would presume, hitchhiking or backpacking around Europe, exploring Europe. And you come home and you find an empty, deserted house. And so the idea is you walk around your house, and by the way, this is the first time you've seen this house because your family moved to this house while you were in Europe. So you come back to this house for the first time, it's empty. And the game is virtually you walking around this house, exploring it, reading notes, picking up objects, looking at pictures, reading notes more or less, and it kind of tells the narrative of your family and what's going on. And the big issue that it circles around is for the most part in this game you'll be finding notes and letters and things from your younger sister Sam. And again, the spoiler warning here is that more or less it blossoms into the fact that you get this backstory of your sister Sam, who turns out she's in high school and she falls in love with another girl, and they have basically a secret lesbian relationship hidden from their parents or whatever. And it's this narrative told from her sister's perspective about this relationship that she has with this girl and keeping it a secret and all that kind of stuff. And the game, it's about 90 minutes long, and that in itself is the gameplay. You just walk around the house, you pick up notes, you read stuff. As you pick up notes, there'll be like an audio voiceover of Sam kind of narrating events that is happening in her life, and then at the end you get the conclusion of ultimately what happens. So and as I mentioned, this game got extremely high praise from the gaming media, and as I mentioned, was a contender for Game of the Year in several major gaming media circles. And so I'm going to talk to you about what I think about the game and the broader issue I think that it creates. All right. So first thing I'm going to talk about, and I normally do not go here or talk about issues like this on this channel because it's just territory I don't really venture into. But I am going to start off by saying that I am completely 100% behind gay rights, and I think it's wrong that they're discriminated against. I think it's wrong that they don't have the same marriage opportunities and things universally that heterosexuals have. I think it's wrong that people view homosexuals as it's like they're just making this choice to be a homosexual, which really makes no sense when you think about how much torment and harassment that these people go through. Why would anyone choose that? But people say that they just choose that to be different, to get attention, and you know, and society kind of paints them as outcasts, not normal, you know, and of course religions treat them as sinners and that kind of thing. And so I think that we have a problem in this country and around the world with how we view homosexuality, and I am 100% behind homosexuals having the same rights as everybody else because they're people just like everybody else. I, you know, am a big believer in, listen, I am completely within my rights to believe whatever it is I want to believe, but it's not my right to project what I believe onto you. So I happen to believe that homosexuals are no different than anybody else, except for the fact that they, you know, their sexual orientation is towards their same gender. However, you know, there's many people in this country who believe that homosexuality is wrong and it's an abomination or whatever the case, and that's fine for them to believe that. I think it's wrong, but the fact is that I don't think that they have the right to project what they feel to be right onto others. They don't have the right to tell homosexuals, no, you're wrong, you should do it my way, and, you know, I just don't believe in that. So you can believe what you want, just don't force others to believe what you believe, because it's not fair. That being said, I praise this game. I praise it because it is, first of all, it's a great, you know, it's a great narrative. It's told very well. I enjoy the way it was presented, and it definitely is bold. It goes out there. It tackles a major issue that is really starting to heat up in this country right now. Is gay rights. We just had, for those of you interested in American football, we just had the player from Missouri, Michael Sam, come out recently as openly gay, and it looks like he's going to be the first openly gay player in the NFL. And so this is something that we're surrounded by all the time. This game goes right out there, attacks it in a tasteful way, and, you know, tries to make the statement and tries to pull at people's heartstrings about how, you know, the homosexuals and that kind of, you know, they have the same love emotions and everything else as heterosexuals do. They struggle with it. They have to struggle through this mindset of, I'm different, you know, I'm weird, there's something wrong with me. They have to struggle through that because that's what society places on them, is that, no, you're weird, it shouldn't be this way. So they have to cope with that mentally, you know, while reconciling themselves with their feelings. And so this game reaches out and grabs that aspect, and I think it's great. I think the community needs games like this. You know, so kudos to the creators for making this game and speaking out about this issue the way they have. Now, that being put aside, one thing that's very interesting to note on Metacritic is that the Metascore of this game is, I believe, an 86, and the Metascore is an average of all the major media outlets who reviewed this game, and the scores they gave, their average, and that's the game's Metascore. So it's an 86 out of 100. Now the user score is a score for users who go on to Metacritic and they rate the game out of 10. And the user score is the average of the people who rate the game. Now this score is you know, it's hard to really tell what's going on with this score because some people just abuse it. Some people say, oh, you know, I don't like this game, 0. They just give it a 0. And other people are like, I really like this game, I thought it was cool, 10. So you have, and then you have people who openly admit in their comments that they gave the game a 0 or gave the game a 10, not because they really feel, but because to make up for the people putting the other extreme. So the Metascore is really, I mean, not the Metascore, the user score on Metacritic is really hard sometimes to get a good gauge of. But it is interesting to look at the user score compared to the Metascore. And what's interesting is not necessarily to look at the number score all the time of the user score, but you can look at number of negative reviews versus positive reviews or mixed reviews. So, you know, if someone gave it a 0, okay, they probably don't think it's a 0, it's a waste of fucking space, all right? But you know, they thought negatively of the game. So it's interesting to look at that. And so the Metascore of Gone Home is 86. The user score is a 5.3. So clearly there is some drastic separation between what the gaming media thinks of the game and what the users think of the game. And it brings up a couple of important issues that I want to flesh out and talk about. So this might be kind of a long episode, but you know, if you're interested in this topic, hopefully you'll stick with me, because I think it's really interesting to talk about. So, the main issue for me is, first of all, which side do I fall on? I happen to fall on the side of the user score in this case. The more 5.3, I don't think the game's a 5.3, but I tend to lead more towards that score than the 86 that the Metascore gave. I think that Gone Home, in addition to several other games, but particularly with Gone Home, highlights an issue of this trend that we're seemingly beginning to see now of what the gaming media is putting their emphasis on when it comes to rating their games very highly. And I'm going to bring up a couple games here that, you know, I feel a certain way, the majority of people feel the opposite, and so I might get some criticism for it, but that's perfectly fine. But when we look at games such as, just from this past year, Gone Home, a game like The Last of Us, that's a big one, I know. And the praise and the kind of scores and stuff that the gaming media is given. Now I realize that users, you know, gamers alike praise The Last of Us, but we'll talk about that. But I'm just talking about the gaming media right now. The gaming media was calling The Last of Us best game ever made, game of the generation, throwing stuff around like that, which that's really heavy statements to just be lightly tossing around, okay? But they were doing it. Gone Home, in conversation for Game of the Year. I don't think it won any Game of the Year awards, but in the conversation, 86 Metascore. It's seeming like the gaming media is putting the heaviest emphasis nowadays on more of the whether or not the game addressed, you know, a substantial issue. Well, you know, did the game tackle an important issue? And they're putting more emphasis on the, what I like to call the wrappings of the game, instead of the game proper. And for me, this is how I feel about it. Video games are about, first and foremost, the number one thing about a video game. What everyone should be focusing on in games to determine, is it a good game, is it a bad game? The first thing that should be scrutinized is the gameplay, the action of playing the game. Because that's what separates video games from other media, like movies and books and TV shows. The idea that we can personally play the game, interact with the game, you know, and in certain games have strategies. We make the action go forward. We are there to put our stamp on these games. Now the wrappings of the game are things such as the graphics, such as the voice acting, such as the story, okay, which I think is a very integral part of a game. I think the story is right there with gameplay, but it's still under gameplay. All right, I think story is the second most important thing in any game. It's very, very important, but it doesn't outweigh gameplay. And a game can still be a good game if it doesn't have the world's best story. So the way I look at it is this. You can put the best wrappings on a game that you can ever put on a game. But to me, if the gameplay is either bad or non-existent, then if the gameplay's bad, to me, right there, it's just not a good game. I don't care how pretty it is. I don't care how good the voice acting is. I am playing a game. I am not watching a movie. I am not watching a TV show. I'm not sitting there with popcorn, putting my controller on the side, eating popcorn, watching something play out. I am playing the game. If it is not fun, if it is not entertaining for me to go about the actions of playing this game, intrinsically, the game is just not that great of a game to me. That is where The Last of Us comes in for me. The game clearly has tremendous wrappings on it. Tremendous graphics. Really good voice acting. A heartwarming, albeit, you know, in my opinion, played out and safe story. Okay? But it was heartwarming, pulled at your heartstrings, you know, tons of times. But for me, the gameplay of the actual game wasn't there for me. And even though the story was heartwarming and pulled on your heartstrings, it was just more of the same kind of stuff I had seen from other zombie apocalypse games. Obviously, others saw it differently. Now, if the gameplay is non-existent or barely there, then we get into a whole other conversation of, is it even a game? Okay? And let me start off by saying that, obviously a game we think of as anything that we have to contribute action to drive it forward. So, you know, games like Gone Home, if we don't touch the controller and don't move the character, there will be nothing. Alright? There will be no story. There will be nothing. Because we have to move the character along and progress the story. Whereas movies, we don't do anything. We sit back and enjoy. But when you have a game like Gone Home, where literally the only thing you're doing, basically, is moving the character around the house to move the story. There's not really any gameplay involved. Do we then take that kind of a game that, keep in mind, is 90 minutes in length and has barely any gameplay, but it does have a tremendous story, touches on a very significant topic, one that is very important in our community right now. You know, the game makes a statement that I feel needs to be made, but can we take a game like that and throw it into the same category and compare it to other games, such as, like just this year, BioShock Infinite, Tomb Raider, and yes, The Last of Us, which is clearly a game. Can we take a game like Gone Home, and we've seen this before, we saw it, I don't know if it was last year or 2 years ago with Journey. The gameplay of that game was minimal. The length of the game was minimal, but it had great graphics. It had cool music. It was a really awesome experience. But can we take those, call them games, and group them with some of the games I just mentioned, and then throw all those together and try to pick a Game of the Year winner? And on top of that, are we really going to, even if we're going to go there, and we're going to compare something like Gone Home to something like, say, BioShock Infinite, are we going to compare those and really say, man, I don't know, these are both in conversation for best game this year? I mean, can we really do that? Something about that, to me, doesn't feel right. And I think that this drives a conversation in the direction of, do we need to start thinking about creating a new category or subcategory of media for these types of experiences, let's call them? should we not group something like Gone Home with the rest of the games that came out this year? Should we put it in a separate category? I don't know what you want to call it, interactive narrative, something along those lines. And really, the biggest company that kind of really started this whole argument was the company Quantic Dream, and specifically in 2010 with the game Heavy Rain that came out. There was a lot of debate because the game obviously got critical acclaim, but the majority of the game was either just moving a character around or doing quick time events. There wasn't much gameplay involved in it. And similarly, Beyond Two Souls, people are very split. Not a lot of gameplay, but really good graphics, voice acting, that story, things like that. So, should these things be separated out? And can you even compare a game like Gone Home to something like Heavy Rain? I mean, Gone Home is 90 minutes, and it's literally just walking around a house picking up notes. The only reason you're there and doing what you're doing is just to read the notes and listen to the voiceover. You're only there for the narrative. You're not there for the gameplay. If I can get the same exact experience out of something by watching a playthrough of it as opposed to playing the game myself, if the experiences are virtually the same, is it really going to be a different experience for me if instead of just watching the playthrough, instead I'm the one that's just moving my thumbstick to progress the story? Is that really a different experience? I tend to think not. So can we, the lines are beginning to be blurred there between what's a game and what's more like a movie or an interactive movie. Something that's really just already written and scripted and created. The only thing we're doing is just, I guess, triggering the narrative to continue. So, I don't know. I mean, to me, you cannot compare a game like Gone Home, or whatever you want to call Gone Home, to the rest of video games. Games that have gameplay. But it seems, with the gaming media, is that they elevate, these games that have important elements or address certain issues or tell a good story. They immediately elevate these games to this pedestal of just, to where they're just revered and viewed as far superior to other games. And I just don't like the way this is going. I didn't like the way that The Last of Us was, like, we're not even talking, they just said this is a really good game. They put this game on such a pedestal, they might as well have put it on an altar and had, like, a holy ritual where people would walk up to the altar and bow to this game. I mean, the kind of things people were saying about The Last of Us was just mind-bending to me. And, it's just, we're putting these games, it's just such an evolution of, of where we lie with what is important in a game or not. And what worries me is that we're moving away from the core of what video games are, in my opinion, which is the gameplay. Playing the game. Is playing the game fun? Because would you rather play a game that maybe the graphics aren't the best out there, maybe the voice acting isn't the best out there, maybe the story, it's a good story, but it's not, it's not the best story ever written, but the gameplay is fun as hell. It's addicting, it's tremendous, you have so much fun when you're playing this game? Or would you rather have a game where, man, the graphics are amazing, the music's great, the voice acting's great, but playing the game is, the actual gameplay is boring, or there's not much there, or the gameplay's bad, it's clunky, it's not fun to actually control, and you don't care about the gameplay. All you care about is suffering through the gameplay just to get to the next story element, because that's really what you're interested in. So, I don't know. And then there's debate of, should the makers of Gone Home, should they, instead of making it a game, should they have just taken that, oh, you move around the thing out of your hands and just made it a movie short? Or is it important enough that you control this person and walk around this house, and that's part of the whole experience? I don't know. It's a complicated issue. It's one that I think bears a lot of, consideration. So I'm going to do a jump cut on the video real quick and come back and finish my thoughts on this whole thing and wrap it up. So I'll be back in 3, 2, 1. And we're back. So, to conclude here, where I stand on the issue is that, number one, I don't like the trend in the mainstream media that we are elevating games just for the sake of a pretty package, of a good story, and regardless really of, is the gameplay innovative, is the gameplay really fun, does the gameplay separate this game from other games? Instead of even worrying about that, all we do is worry about the graphics and the story, and if that's good, then the game is a 9.5 out of 10. I don't like that trend. I think the focus still needs to begin and end with the gameplay, and everything else is icing on the cake, so to speak. Everything else adds to it, but the gameplay should be the core of video games. I also don't believe that experiences such as Gone Home, Journey, those type of things should be compared to full retail release games that are, gameplay intensive, and I think that they should be in their own sort of category as more of an interactive experience. You can call them games, but they're not really, in my estimation, in the same category or class as gameplay intrinsic major releases, or not even major releases, just your normal, what you would think of a game. There's a lot of gameplay involved. I think they should be looked at separately, and certainly I don't think a game like Gone Home can be compared to something like a BioShock Infinite or a Tomb Raider or a Grand Theft Auto 5 and say, well, Grand Theft Auto 5, Gone Home, 90 minutes of walking around a house, or how many hours in Grand Theft Auto? 40, 50 hours of this game that's fun, and all these other things, and that you run around and do all this stuff. I mean, it blows my mind that somebody can actually take those two games and put them in the same conversation and say, well, they're both equal candidates for Game of the Year. I mean, just no. So, while Gone Home is to be commended, and it is to be shown a lot of praise, it does deserve to have its time because it speaks on important issues and does something very, very brave and bold in what it asserts. It should not be, in my mind, in the conversation with the other games that came out this year, this past year, as Game of the Year. I mean, to me, that's just over the top, and it just feels like it's one of these things that it doesn't matter the length, it doesn't matter the fact that there's no gameplay. It talks about gay rights, and it's a good story, so it's elevated up here, and it can be compared to other major games. To me, that's just wrong, and it has no place in that type of conversation. It just doesn't. I don't think it's fair to Gone Home, to be quite honest with you, to do that. So, that's my feelings on it. But what I want to do at this point is to ask you guys to keep this conversation going, because this could be a topic that I make a follow-up video on depending on the conversation that ensues in the comments. I want to know from you guys several things. First of all, I want to know your thoughts on Gone Home. If you've played it, if you've seen a playthrough of it, what did you think about the game? And, what were your thoughts on it? Number two, what are your thoughts on the way that the gaming media is headed now with elevating certain games, seemingly just based on the things surrounding the gameplay, and at times forgetting the gameplay element which in my opinion is the most important part. What do you think about that? Clearly, the people, the users who played Gone Home on Metacritic thought vastly different than the gaming media. They tended to agree with me. The fact that the game is not this tremendous game like all the others that should be put up there in the conversation. So what do you think about that? Do you think that games like Gone Home should be considered just as much games as something like Grand Theft Auto 5 or BioShock Infinite? Do you think that they should be in the same category? They should be lumped together, and yes, that's just as much a game as any other games? Or do you think that we need to start driving a conversation towards having a subcategory for games, for things like Gone Home and Journey and these kind of sensual experiences that are only really technically games because you have to move the character in order to experience it. So what are your thoughts on that? I'd really like to know. And if you do think that Gone Home should be in the same category with all the other AAA games, do you think it's fair to say that Gone Home is in the category for best game of the year, as compared to the other games? Do you think that 90 minutes with a really good story with barely any gameplay, but because of how good the story is and because of the importance of it, that alone is enough to put it in that conversation, or do you think otherwise? So there's a lot of different things here that you could talk about and give your opinions on. What I will say is this: I normally am not really super strict on monitoring comments of videos and policing them and that kind of thing, but because we are talking about a sensitive issue here with gay rights, I am going to be policing this video pretty heavily. I'm not going to put up with any kind of hate speech. I'm not going to put up with bigotry. I'm not going to put up with any kind of homophobic language or anything. There's a difference between being homophobic and simply expressing, I don't support homosexual marriage. That's not what I believe. Whether it's because of your religion or whatever, that's fine. What's not fine is to say stuff like, well, I don't believe in homosexual marriage because, and I don't know, they're abominations because they do, and, I don't know, just, there's a difference, alright? There's a difference between just saying, I don't support it and here's why, versus, I don't support it and they're just, I don't know. I can't really think of a good example, but, homophobic slurs and that kind of stuff, I'm not going to put up with. And I'm going to be very strict on it. If I see it, you're blocked, and I'm not asking questions, I'm not, giving answers, it's over. So, when you type something, do yourself a favor and read it first before you hit send. Read what you just typed, and think about, is there any way that this could be construed as hateful or, or not appropriate? And if you think that there's a way that I could view it as hate speech or homophobic or something, don't send it. Because if you do, you're gone, and that's it. So I just want to make that quite clear. I'm not going to stand for it. If you want to spew homophobic hate or whatever, you can head over to Caden Calger's freaking channel and spew it over there on that channel, because this isn't the place for it. So he supports bigotry. So if you're a bigot, you can go over there and support bigotry. But I don't on this channel, and therefore, I'm not going to let it happen. Other than that, I look forward to hearing what you guys have to say about this issue. There's a bunch of different things I covered, and I thought it was a really good Voodoo Thoughts topic. This is exactly the kind of topic that I was focused on when I created the Voodoo Thoughts series, and this, even though it's kind of an older topic, because the game came out several months ago, I just saw a playthrough of it tonight, and I started thinking about these kind of things in my head as I watched. So yeah, thank you guys very much for listening. I hope to see your, your thoughts, your response to this. I'm really interested to see what the gaming community thinks and the different views. It interests me greatly. So keep it mature, keep it clean, and don't say anything that's going to get you blocked, because you will. And other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. I'm Voodoo, and I will see you next time with, hopefully I find some more issues like this to make Voodoo's thoughts on, because I really enjoy making these, and I enjoy even more seeing the feedback. So hopefully I can come up with some more topics like this to do thoughts on real soon. But anyway, I'm out. Thank you for watching, and have fun in the comments, I guess, debating this. So peace out.